At 1:15 a.m., the city slept under rain and secrets when a ruthless Mafia boss got a trembling call from a little girl saying, "Please, save my mom. She needs you." But what he didn't know, the woman fighting for life was the only one he ever loved, and the child begging for help was his own blood. Tonight, love and bullets will collide, and his heart will face the war he thought he buried years ago. The city slept beneath a blanket of rain and regret. Thunder rumbled faintly over the distant skyline, its echoes swallowed by the restless hum of neon lights. Inside the penthouse on the 32nd floor, Rode Varetti sat alone, surrounded by shadows that obeyed no one but him. The soft amber of a half-empty whiskey glass flickered in his hand, catching the reflection of a man who looked powerful to the world, but hollow to himself. The clock on the wall blinked 1 a.m. He should have been sleeping. Instead, he was tracing the rim of the glass, lost in the sound of his own breathing. Nights like this were dangerous. When silence grew too loud, the past started whispering. The phone buzzed once, cutting through the quiet like a knife. Rode frowned. No one dared to call him at this hour. The men who did usually didn't live to make a second call. But something in that vibration, something faint, trembling, desperate, made him reach for it instead of ignoring it. He picked up, voice cold and sharp. Who is this? What came next didn't belong in his world. A child's voice, fragile, trembling, soaked in fear, whispered through the speaker, "Please, save my mom. She needs you." The whiskey slipped from his hand and shattered against the floor, but he didn't hear it. His heartbeat drowned everything else. He sat frozen, every nerve on fire. Who are you?" he asked, his voice softer now but edged with disbelief. The girl hesitated, breathing hard as though she was hiding from something. "Her name is Shirley," she whispered. For a moment, Rode forgot how to breathe. That name was a wound, one he'd buried deep, one he'd sworn never to touch again. 6 years ago, Shirley Coleman was the only person who had seen the man behind his brutality. She'd reached places no one else could, and he had left her, not because he wanted to, but because his enemies had been circling too close. He thought leaving her would save her life. He thought staying would destroy it. Now her name had returned to him like a ghost dragging chains through his chest. "Where is she?" he demanded. But before the child could answer, the line went dead. Only silence remained. He tried calling back, once, twice. Nothing. Each unanswered ring echoed through the room, each one heavier than a bullet. The silence that followed was suffocating. Rode pressed the phone to his forehead, eyes shut, jaw clenched. The name, the voice, the plea. It all felt too real to be coincidence. Something inside him, something he thought long dead, started to stir. He stood up slowly, the sound of his boots striking the marble floor, cutting through the dark. The glass on the ground cracked further under his step. His reflection stared back at him from the window. Cold eyes, tired lines. A man who once ruled empires but couldn't rule his own heart. "Shirley," he murmured under his breath, tasting the name like a forbidden sin. Outside, lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the city. Somewhere out there, a woman he once loved was in danger, and a little girl, scared and desperate, had reached out to him for help. Rode opened the drawer of his desk and pulled out a handgun, sleek and black like the night itself. It had been years since he'd used it, but his hands remembered every motion. He slipped the weapon into his coat, then reached for his keys. His mind was a storm, one part disbelief, one part hope, and the rest pure fury. Whoever had touched Shirley's world again had made the biggest mistake of their life. He didn't even stop to think whether the call could be a trap. If it was, he would still go. He always went when her name was involved. As he stepped out of the penthouse, the rain hit him like old memories. The cold drops soaked into his shirt, but he didn't flinch. His black car waited below, sleek and quiet, engine growling low as he slid behind the wheel. For a moment, he just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, eyes staring through the windshield at nothing. Images flickered in his mind. Shirley laughing in sunlight, her hair tangled in wind, her voice whispering his name the night he left. He had walked away from her 6 years ago because he thought love couldn't survive his world. Now that decision was haunting him, whispering that maybe he'd never really saved her at all. He started the engine. The sound roared through the underground parking like a promise. The city lights stretched ahead of him, blurring through the rain as he sped into the night. The streets were almost empty, except for a few lost souls wandering between bars and street lamps. Rhodes' eyes were sharp, searching every corner, every passing shadow. His instinct screamed that something bigger was waiting for him, something that had been set in motion long before this night began. He didn't know yet whether fate had sent him to save Shirley or bury the last piece of himself that still cared. The wipers swept away the rain in a rhythmic heartbeat, and each passing second deepened the ache in his chest. Who was that little girl? How did she have his number? The sound of her voice still echoed in his ears, soft, trembling, but carrying a kind of trust that tore through the walls he'd spent years building. He'd spent half his life commanding men who killed without blinking. Yet that small voice had shaken him more than gunfire ever could. There was something in it, a pull he couldn't explain, like his soul recognized her before his mind did. He drove faster, the tires hissing against wet asphalt. The city blurred into streaks of light and shadow. Rhodes' phone sat silent beside him, but he kept glancing at it, half hoping it would ring again, half fearing what he'd hear. The thought of Shirley alone, hurt, terrified, made something primal rise inside him. He had buried his heart once, but tonight it was clawing its way back from the grave. He didn't even know if she was still alive. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whoever had hurt her would never see another sunrise. The GPS pinged faintly, a call record from a restricted number traced to the city's east side. An old district, quiet, half abandoned, the kind of place where no one asked questions. His pulse quickened, every muscle in his body tightened with anticipation. He could already sense it, the smell of danger, the weight of destiny closing in. He had walked away from that world years ago, but now it was dragging him back, one heartbeat at a time. As the car cut through the night, lightning flashed again, illuminating his face in the rearview mirror, cold eyes burning with something raw, something dangerous. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a storm moving toward whoever dared to whisper Shirley's name. And beneath that fury was something even stronger, a strange, haunting sense that this night wasn't just about her. That little girl's voice, it hadn't just called him for help, it had called him home. Rhodes' jaw tightened. He didn't believe in coincidences. Someone had known how to reach him. Someone had known the one name that could still make him bleed. That meant this wasn't random. It was deliberate. A setup? Maybe, but he didn't care. If it was a trap, he would walk right into it and drag every devil inside out with him. He turned the radio off and let the sound of rain fill the car. It was the same sound that had filled the night he left her, the night he promised himself never to return. Now, 6 years later, it sounded like fate laughing in his face. As he neared the hospital district, the traffic lights flickered yellow through the fog. Rhodes slowed the car just enough to scan the street. He saw nothing unusual. No guards, no shadows, no movement. Yet his gut twisted, the way it always did before something life-changing happened. He parked across the street under the dim glow of a broken streetlight. The engine hummed low, ready to move at a second's notice. For a long moment, he didn't get out. He just stared at the hospital entrance in the distance, the rain blurring its shape. He didn't know what waited inside, truth, lies, or ghosts. But he knew one thing. The moment he walked through those doors, nothing in his life would ever be the same. He took one last breath, then reached into his coat and checked the gun. The metal was cold against his palm, grounding him. "Shirley," he whispered again, as though saying her name might summon her back. Lightning flashed once more, casting his shadow across the dashboard. It looked like the silhouette of the man he used to be, ruthless, unstoppable, unbreakable. But this time, there was something else behind his eyes, something fragile, something human. The rain grew heavier. Somewhere in the city, a siren wailed, long and lonely. Rode pushed open the car door, stepping into the storm. The air smelled like metal and memory. His coat flared behind him as he walked toward the unknown. The pavement reflected the city lights like a broken mirror, and with each step, he could feel the ghosts of the past walking beside him. He didn't know what awaited him beyond those hospital walls. But the little girl's voice had lit a fire in him that even years of darkness couldn't kill. He was going to find Shirley. He was going to find the truth. And if anyone stood in his way, they would learn exactly why the underworld still whispered his name in fear. Somewhere above him, thunder cracked open the sky. Rode didn't look up. He just kept walking, his heart pounding with a promise that would change everything before the dawn came. 2. Rain dripped from the edge of Rode's coat as he stepped through the sliding hospital doors. The air inside was cold and sterile, but beneath it lingered another scent. Fear, faint but unmistakable. The kind that wrapped itself around a man's gut and refused to let go. His boots echoed against the polished floor, heavy and deliberate. The receptionist looked up, startled, as though she'd seen a ghost step out of the storm. His presence carried weight. It always had. "Shirley Coleman," Rode said, voice low but cutting through the quiet like steel. The nurse hesitated, her fingers trembling over the keyboard. His name had spread through the city years ago, whispered in corners, feared in silence. He saw the flicker of recognition in her eyes before she even spoke. "I see you," she murmured, barely audible. "Third floor, room 307. Rode didn't wait for more. He moved past her, the hallway lights flickering overhead as he went. His footsteps quickened, the sound of rain dripping from his hair marking his trail. Each step felt heavier than the last, like he was walking into a memory he'd spent 6 years trying to forget. The elevator door slid open with a mechanical sigh. Inside, the walls mirrored his reflection. Sharp jaw, storm-dark eyes, a face carved by violence and regret. He pressed the button for the 3rd floor. As the elevator ascended, his heart did something strange. It stuttered. He had faced death more times than he could count, but tonight his chest ached like it was breaking open. "Shirley," he whispered, barely a breath. The name still carried 1,000 meanings: love, loss, unfinished promises. The doors opened with a soft chime. The corridor was dim, washed in a cold blue light that made everything feel unreal. Nurses passed by, their eyes darting away from him. He followed the room numbers, each one pulling him closer to the truth he wasn't ready for. When he reached room 307, he paused. For a long moment, he couldn't move. His hand hovered over the handle, trembling in a way it hadn't in years. Finally, he pushed the door open. The sight inside stopped him cold. Shirley lay on the bed, pale and fragile beneath a thin hospital sheet. The woman who once faced his chaos with fearless eyes now looked almost ethereal. Too still, too quiet. Tubes and monitors surrounded her, each beep a cruel reminder that life was hanging by a thread. Rode took a slow step forward, his breath caught between disbelief and guilt. He'd imagined this reunion 1,000 ways, but not like this, not surrounded by machines keeping her alive. He reached the side of her bed and knelt down. For a long moment, he just stared. Her hair spilled over the pillow, a few strands stuck to her face from the sweat of a battle she wasn't awake to fight. His fingers twitched with the urge to touch her, to brush those strands away. But he hesitated, afraid that contact might break her. Then he heard it. A small sound behind him. A soft sniffle, like a child trying not to cry. Rode turned slowly, and that's when he saw her. A little girl stood in the corner, barely taller than the bed, holding a small teddy bear with one arm. Her curls framed her face in a halo of chestnut brown, damp at the edges from rain, but it was her eyes, wide, hazel, deep, that made Rode forget how to breathe. They were familiar, too familiar. They carried the warmth of Shirley. And something darker, something that mirrored his own reflection. For the first time in years, fear truly touched him, not the fear of bullets or betrayal, but the kind that comes when your heart recognizes something your mind can't yet name. "Who are you, sweetheart?" Rode asked. His voice softer than he'd intended, breaking through the still air like a hesitant whisper. The girl looked at him without fear, her tiny hands gripping the bear tighter. "I'm Luna," she said. The name floated in the air like a fragile secret. Rode's chest tightened. Luna. He'd never heard the name before, but something about it wrapped around him like fate's quiet laughter. The girl stepped closer, eyes shimmering with innocent trust. "Mama said, you're my hero." For a second, the world tilted. His vision blurred, his throat locked, and every heartbeat felt like thunder inside him. The words echoed again. "You're my hero." He wanted to ask her what she meant, how she knew him, but deep inside, something already knew. The shape of her face, the arch of her brow, the faint tilt of her smile, all of it whispered the same impossible truth. He sank into the chair beside the bed, still staring at Luna. She looked no older than 5, maybe 6 years. The same number that separated him and Shirley. A tremor ran through his hands as the pieces began to align in his mind. He turned to Shirley again, his voice breaking as he spoke. "You hid her from me." The words were barely a whisper. Luna tilted her head, confused by the sudden wetness in his eyes. "Are you sad?" she asked softly. Her innocence hurt more than any bullet ever could. Rode wiped his face roughly with his palm, forcing himself to breathe. "No, little one," he murmured, "just remembering something important." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small handkerchief and handed it to her. "Here," he said, "for the tears." She took it with both hands, eyes big and curious. "Mama said heroes don't cry," she whispered. Rode smiled faintly, a broken kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sometimes they do," he said, "when they remember what they almost lost." The monitor beside Shirley beeped softly, breaking the silence between them. Rode turned to her again, studying her face under the pale glow of the machines. There was a scar on her wrist, faint, healing. One he didn't remember. Whatever she had been through, it hadn't been easy. Someone had hunted her. Someone had made her run. He felt Luna's tiny hand brush against his. "She said you'd come," she whispered, eyes wide with faith. "She said you always keep your promises." Rode froze. He didn't even realize he was holding his breath until his chest started to burn. Promises. He'd made only one. The night he left her. If anything happens, you run. You don't look back. And yet here they were, both of them in front of him, caught in the crossfire of his choices. He leaned forward, brushing his fingers gently against Shirley's hand. Her skin was cold, but her pulse still beat beneath his touch. "I'm here now," he murmured. "I should never have left." His voice cracked under the weight of regret. Luna climbed onto the chair beside him, watching her mother with quiet eyes. "She always said you'd find us," she whispered, hugging her teddy closer. Rode looked at her again, trying to keep his composure. "Us." The word hit him like lightning. Not her, not me, us? His pulse raced. He wanted to ask her 100 questions. Who raised her, where they'd been, who hurt them. But he stopped himself. She was a child. She didn't owe him answers. The nurse entered briefly, checking Shirley's monitors, and froze when she saw Rhodes sitting there. Her voice trembled. "Sir, visiting hours are—" Rhodes' gaze flicked to her once, and that was enough. She turned pale, nodded quickly, and left without another word. Silence settled again, heavy but fragile. Rhodes sat there, feeling like the walls were closing in. He had walked into this place expecting to face danger. But he hadn't expected this. A living, breathing piece of himself staring up at him with Shirley's eyes. He looked at Luna, and something unspoken passed between them. Then faintly, Shirley stirred. A small sound escaped her lips. Weak, broken, but enough to make every muscle in Rhodes' body go rigid. He leaned forward instantly, his hand tightening around hers. "Shirley," he whispered. Her lashes fluttered, but her eyes didn't open. Luna gasped softly. "Mama?" Rhodes turned to her. "It's okay, little one," he murmured. "She's fighting. She's strong." But his voice shook, betraying the fear he tried to hide. Outside the window, thunder rolled again, as if the night itself refused to rest. Rhodes looked out briefly, scanning the rain-soaked skyline. He knew this peace wouldn't last. A gut instinct told him someone was still watching, that this hospital wasn't as safe as it seemed. He rose slowly, his gaze hardening again, every trace of softness replaced by the steel of a man ready for war. He turned to Luna. "Stay with her," he said quietly. "Don't open this door for anyone but me." She nodded, clutching the teddy bear tight. Rhodes took one last look at Shirley, the woman who once melted his world into color. And then at Luna, the little miracle he never knew existed. The realization hit him like a silent explosion. He wasn't just saving a woman tonight, he was saving his family. As he stepped toward the door, the faint hum of footsteps echoed down the corridor outside. Too heavy to be hospital staff. Rhodes' instincts sharpened instantly. His hand went to his gun, eyes narrowing. The rain outside grew harder, drumming against the glass. The storm was coming, not just outside, but inside those very walls. And Rhodes Veretti, the man who once left love behind for power, was about to face the price of both. 3. The sound of approaching footsteps grew heavier outside the hospital room. Too deliberate, too synchronized to belong to nurses. Rhodes' instincts sharpened in an instant. His hand hovered near the gun beneath his coat, his body frozen in that dangerous calm before violence erupts. Luna sat by Shirley's bedside, her small fingers gripping the teddy bear, unaware of the storm that was about to crash through the door. The doorknob twitched, once, twice. Then, bang. The door burst open, slamming against the wall so hard it cracked the plaster. 2 men stormed in, dressed in black suits, their faces hidden under the shadows of the hallway lights. Their eyes were cold, mechanical. Killers trained for one purpose. One of them raised his gun toward the bed. "End it now!" he barked. Rhodes moved before the words finished leaving the man's mouth. The old reflexes, the ones buried deep under years of restraint, came alive like fire to gasoline. His coat flared as he sidestepped, drawing his weapon in one fluid motion. The first shot split the air, a clean, thunderous crack that shattered the sterile quiet of the room. The nearest man dropped instantly, collapsing against the wall with a thud, his gun clattering uselessly to the floor. Luna screamed, covering her ears. Rhodes turned, eyes blazing as the second attacker lunged. The man was faster, more reckless, a blur of motion charging toward Shirley's bed. Rhodes didn't hesitate. He let the gun fall from his grip, his hand reaching instead for the blade strapped beneath his sleeve. The steel flashed once, silver under the harsh hospital lights, before it found flesh. The man staggered, choking, his blood painting the floor in dark ribbons before he collapsed beside his partner. The entire fight had lasted less than 10 seconds. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Rhodes' chest rose and fell with sharp, controlled breaths, adrenaline roaring through his veins. He turned immediately to Luna, crouching in front of her. Her face was pale, her small body trembling as she clutched the teddy bear tighter. "It's okay, baby," Rode said softly, forcing calm into his voice. "You're safe, I promise." He took off his coat and wrapped it around her tiny shoulders, shielding her from the sight of the fallen men. But even as he spoke, a low alarm began to wail somewhere down the hall. A shrill, pulsing sound that meant someone had triggered the emergency system. Rode turned toward Shirley's bed and froze. The sheets were soaked in blood. The monitors were still beeping, but the woman he had been protecting just moments ago was gone. His heart slammed against his ribs. The IV line dangled loose from its pole, blood trailing in a faint smear toward the door on the opposite side of the room, the emergency exit leading to the back corridors. "Shirley?" he called out, his voice raw. There was no answer. The only sound was the alarm echoing through the building and the rain hammering harder against the windows. Luna's whimper broke the silence. "Mama!" Rhode's pulse exploded with panic. Someone had taken her. Someone had come for Shirley while he was fighting to keep her alive. He moved quickly to the back door, gun raised, eyes scanning every shadow. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting ghostly flashes down the empty hall beyond. He followed the trail. Small drops of blood scattered across the white tiles, smeared in places where someone had been dragged. Each step felt like a knife twisting deeper into his chest. He'd spent years protecting the woman he loved from this world, and now it had reached her again, right under his nose. He reached the intersection where the hallway split into two paths. One led toward the emergency stairwell, the other toward the service elevators. The blood veered left. He followed, his boots silent despite his pace, every sense stretched thin. He caught movement at the far end, a flicker of a coat, a flash of a shoulder disappearing behind the elevator doors. Rode sprinted. The metallic ding of the elevator closing echoed through the hall as he reached it. He slammed his hand against the call button. Nothing. The numbers above the door ticked down, floor by floor. Whoever had her was escaping. He turned, scanning for another way down. The stairwell door was slightly ajar. He kicked it open and descended 3 steps at a time, his gun gripped tight, his mind burning with fury. The stairwell smelled of rust and rain. Somewhere below, he heard the faint creak of another door opening. The ground floor exit. He burst through the final door into the back alley behind the hospital. The rain poured harder now, drenching his clothes in seconds. The alley was empty, except for the faint shimmer of blood washing away in the puddles and the distant hum of an engine turning over. A black van peeled away from the curb, tires screeching as it sped into the fog. Rode raised his gun, but it was too far. He fired once. The bullet shattered the van's back window. But it didn't stop. The vehicle disappeared into the night, swallowed by rain and darkness. He lowered his arm slowly, every muscle trembling. Behind him, hospital security finally burst out into the alley, shouting orders, radios crackling. Rode didn't even turn. He knew what they would see. 2 dead men upstairs, blood in the hallways, and the trail leading to him. He had seconds before they decided he was the threat. He slipped his gun back under his coat, grabbed the nearest exit ladder, and climbed to the rooftop. From there, he could see the van's fading taillights cutting through the fog. His jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Whoever had taken her had planned this perfectly. They knew his timing. They knew how to distract him. That meant one thing. This wasn't random. This was personal. Luna. He froze. He'd left her inside. He dropped back down, racing through the stairwell toward room 307. The alarm still blared, nurses shouting and running in panic. When he reached the door, his heart nearly stopped. The bed was still empty, but Luna was there, sitting in the corner, crying quietly into his coat. Rode knelt beside her instantly. Hey, it's me," he said, his voice shaking with urgency. She looked up at him, eyes wet and terrified. "They took Mama," she whispered. "The men. They took her." Rode pulled her close, his hand steadying the back of her head. "I know, baby. I'm going to find her." He meant it, not as a promise, but as a vow. Something in his voice made even the chaos outside feel still for a second. He rose, scanning the room one last time. The two bodies lay motionless near the door, the blood around them spreading like dark shadows. He crouched beside one of them, searching for any clue. A tattoo on the wrist, a serpent wrapped around a rose. Rhodes' eyes narrowed. He knew that symbol. It belonged to a faction that was supposed to have died with his past. One led by men who once served under him before turning traitor. He looked back at Luna. She was watching him, shivering in silence. He reached for her hand. "We have to go," he said. "It's not safe here anymore." She hesitated, glancing toward her mother's bed. "What about Mama?" Rhodes' throat tightened. "We'll bring her back," he promised. "I swear it." He pulled the hood of his coat over her head and lifted her into his arms. As he stepped into the hallway, a voice over the intercom announced a lockdown. Security sweeping the building, exits closing. Rhodes cursed under his breath. He had to move fast. He found the maintenance corridor leading toward the underground parking lot. It was dim, lit only by flickering bulbs and the red glow of emergency signs. Every echo of his footsteps felt like a countdown. Luna buried her face against his shoulder, clutching the teddy bear between them. When they reached the lower level, Rhodes set her gently inside the car and started the engine. The roar filled the silence. For a moment, he stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. Water streaming down his face, eyes burning with something far deeper than rage. He turned to Luna. "Listen to me," he said softly. "No matter what happens next, you stay with me. Don't talk to anyone. Don't open the door for anyone. Understand?" She nodded quickly, tears streaking her cheeks. "I just want Mama back." Rhodes' voice dropped to a whisper. "So do I." He hit the gas. The tires screeched as the car shot out of the parking lot, blending into the storm. The city lights reflected in his eyes like distant fire, each one a reminder that somewhere out there, Shirley was fighting to stay alive. Rhodes didn't know where they had taken her, but he knew one thing. Someone had just declared war on the wrong man. He gripped the wheel tighter, eyes locked on the road ahead, rain cascading down the windshield in rivers. Luna clung to the seat beside him, whispering softly to her teddy bear. Behind them, the hospital alarm still wailed through the night. Ahead of them, only darkness, danger, and the faint hope of finding the woman who had once been his heart. The storm was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The rain refused to stop. It poured like the heavens were punishing the city, washing blood and truth into the same river of sins. Rhodes' car cut through the storm, tires slicing puddles, headlights glowing faintly through the fog. Luna sat in the passenger seat, silent and small, wrapped in his coat. Her little fingers held the teddy bear like it was her lifeline. Rhodes' mind was a battlefield. Every red light blurred past, every street corner whispered memories he'd tried to bury. Shirley's laughter, her soft voice. The night he left her 6 years ago, when he'd thought walking away would save her from his world. Now she was gone again, only this time it wasn't by choice. He pulled into one of his old safe houses, a forgotten warehouse at the edge of the city. The building was quiet, cold and drenched in shadows. As he carried Luna inside, she looked around with curious, frightened eyes. "Is this where we live now?" she asked softly. "For now," Rhodes replied, setting her gently on the worn sofa. "Until I find your mom." Luna hugged her teddy closer. "You promise?" He crouched to her level, meeting her gaze. "I don't break promises." But the truth was heavier than his words. He'd broken one 6 years ago, and the cost was everything. He walked toward the old desk in the corner, where weapons, maps, and burner phones littered the surface. One by one, he powered them on. The silence was replaced by the hum of technology, the blinking lights of connections rekindled. Within minutes, his network lit up. Old names, old numbers, ghosts of a life he swore he'd left behind. "Find out who hit St. Helena Hospital tonight," Rode ordered into the phone. "2 bodies down, 1 woman taken. Name's Shirley Coleman. Anyone touches her, I burn their world." The man on the other end stammered, recognizing the voice. "Boss, we thought you were dead?" Rhode's tone was razor sharp. "So did they. Let's remind them I'm not." He ended the call. Luna watched quietly from the couch, her big hazel eyes glistening. "Mama said you were brave," she murmured, "but she also said you were sad." Her innocence cut through him, deeper than any bullet. He turned to her, trying to form a smile. "She's right about both." She tilted her head. "She told me, if I ever met you, I should give you something." Rode froze. "What do you mean?" Luna reached into the small backpack she had been clutching since the hospital. From within it, she pulled out a small red box, velvet, worn at the corners, yet still gleaming faintly under the dim light. She held it with both hands, careful, like something sacred. She said, "If you ever come back, give this to him." Rode's pulse slowed. He took the box gently, feeling its weight. Too light to be dangerous, too heavy not to be meaningful. The red velvet was damp from the rain, but inside he could feel the faint chill of metal. He sat down slowly, Luna watching him as if the world depended on what he'd find inside. The lid creaked as he opened it. Inside lay a small silver pendant shaped like a heart, tarnished but intact. Beneath it, a brass key tied to a thin red ribbon, and at the bottom, a folded piece of paper sealed with tears that had long dried. Rode's hand trembled for the first time in years. He recognized that handwriting even before he unfolded the letter, elegant, flowing, unmistakably hers, Shirley's handwriting. He hesitated, his heart pounding. Then he opened it. "If you're reading this, Rode, they found me again." His eyes scanned the lines, the words cutting like knives. "I lied to protect Luna. I lied because the truth would destroy you. Don't trust anyone, not even your blood. The people hunting me are the same ones who once hunted you. They never stopped." His vision blurred. The ink had bled in places, like tears had fallen while she wrote. His breath grew uneven as he read the last line. "If I don't make it, promise me one thing. Keep Luna away from the name Varetti. She deserves a life that's not written in blood." Rode's grip tightened around the paper until it crumpled slightly. His eyes burned, not from anger, but from the weight of everything he'd lost. The pendant gleamed in his palm, the heart-shaped silver catching the dim light. He turned it over. On the back, engraved faintly, were 3 words: "Our forever promise." The memory slammed into him. 6 years ago, a small beach house on the coast. Shirley laughing as she slipped the pendant around his neck. "Promise me," she'd said, "no matter what happens, you'll always find your way back." He had, but too late. Rode rose abruptly from the chair, pacing like a caged animal. "Don't trust anyone, not even your blood." The words echoed in his head like gunfire. Who could she mean? His brother? His men? Someone still inside his circle? His phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. One of his lieutenants. "Boss, we found something. The men from the hospital, they weren't freelancers. They had old family marks. Yours." Rode froze mid-step. "Mine?" "Yes, sir. One had a Varetti insignia tattooed under the serpent mark." His blood ran cold. He hung up without a word, his reflection staring back from the rain-streaked window. For the first time, he saw the cracks, the lines between loyalty and betrayal blurring in his own name. Behind him, Luna's voice was small, trembling. "Are you mad, Mr. Rode?" He turned, softening instantly. "No, sweetheart, not at you." He knelt, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You did good giving me that box." "Will it help you find Mama?" she asked, hope flickering in her voice. He looked at the pendant and the key again. "It will," he said. though he wasn't sure yet how. This key, it opened something important. But what? He turned the key over in his fingers. Old brass, worn teeth, not to a house, too small for a safe. Then he noticed an engraving near the base, C27. His eyes narrowed. That was no ordinary marking. It was a code. He crossed the room, yanked open a drawer, and pulled out an old map of the city. His finger traced the coordinates, connecting the letter and the engraving, C27. It pointed to a warehouse on the docks, a location long abandoned after his syndicate's last war. Of course, he muttered. She hid something there. Rode grabbed his gun, the pendant, and the key, then turned to Luna. "We're going for a drive." "But it's dark," she said softly. "I know." He knelt, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your mom trusted you with something precious. Now we have to trust her message. She left us a trail." The storm outside howled louder, wind slamming against the windows as if the night itself was warning them to stay put. But Rode was already moving. Once he made a decision, nothing, not rain, not bullets, not fate, could stop him. As he lifted Luna into the car again, thunder rolled overhead. Lightning lit up the skyline, reflecting in his eyes like shards of silver rage. In his pocket, the letter pressed against his chest, its words burning like fire. "Don't trust anyone, not even your blood." He started the engine, the roar echoing across the wet asphalt. The city stretched before him, alive, dangerous, and full of ghosts that refused to stay buried. Behind him, Luna whispered sleepily, "Will Mama be there?" Rode looked at her in the mirror. "If she left us that key, she wanted me to find her, and I will." As they drove into the night, the red box sat on the dashboard, gleaming faintly with each flash of lightning, like a heart still beating in the dark. But neither of them knew what waited at Dock C27. Some secrets were never meant to be unlocked, and some hearts, once opened, could never be closed again. 5. The storm had calmed into a whispering drizzle by the time Rode's car reached the docks. The clock on the dashboard glowed 2:47 a.m., but the night refused to sleep. The city lights flickered across the river, painting silver veins over the black water. Luna had fallen asleep in the back seat, her tiny face peaceful against the sound of rain tapping the windows. Rode's eyes lingered on her for a moment, his reason to keep breathing, before stepping out into the cold. The wind bit through his coat, carrying the smell of rust and salt from the docks. The old warehouse stood ahead, looming like a forgotten beast. Its windows were shattered, its steel doors scarred by years of battles no one remembered anymore. Dock C27, the same place that had once been the Veretti Syndicate's blood ground. Now it waited for him again. He adjusted his gun beneath his jacket, slid the key from his pocket, and studied it one last time. The engraving matched the faded number on the door's frame. "She was here," he murmured, voice low. He left the engine idling and whispered to the sleeping girl, "I'll bring her back, Luna, I swear." The door groaned open, echoing across the hollow interior. The smell of oil and burnt gunpowder hit him instantly, a warning that someone had already been here. The shadows were thick, every corner breathing danger. He moved silently, boots pressing against wet concrete, heart sinking with every distant drip of water. In the far distance, a faint light flickered, dim, yellow, like a dying flame. He raised his gun, finger steady. One wrong move and the night would end in red. The light came from an old crate in the center of the hall. A single bulb dangled above it, swaying with the wind. As he stepped closer, he noticed footprints, small ones, recent, smeared by the damp floor. He crouched and traced them with his fingers. A woman's shoes. His chest tightened. Shirley. The whisper of her name was enough to break the silence. Then, from the darkness came the sound of a soft gasp. Rode spun around, gun aimed, and there she was. Shirley stood at the edge of the light, trembling, her hair drenched, her face pale but alive. Her hand gripped a gun, the other clutching her chest as if holding her heart in place. "You came," she breathed, disbelief and longing tangled in her voice. Rhoda froze. For a moment the world stopped spinning. Every scar, every wound, every sleepless night, all of it led to this second. He took one slow step forward, lowering his weapon. "Always," he said, his voice cracking from everything he couldn't say. She stumbled forward, tears blending with rain. "They said you were gone. I didn't—" Her words were cut off by the echo of metal clanging. Rhoda grabbed her wrist, pulling her behind a steel column just as bullets sliced through the air. Sparks erupted. The warehouse roared to life with chaos. Dozens of gunmen emerged from the shadows, their muzzles flashing like lightning. Rhoda returned fire, dragging Shirley toward the crates. The old instincts burned through his veins again. Cold precision, perfect aim, no hesitation. He hit 2, 3, 4 men before the fifth nearly clipped him. "Stay low," he shouted, shielding her. "They found me again," she whispered between gunfire. "It's Cortez. He's here." The name sent rage coursing through him. Cortez, once his ally, now the traitor who tried to erase him from the world. Rhoda's eyes darted across the room until he saw him, tall, smirking, holding a remote detonator in one hand, his silver tooth glinting in the light. "Touching reunion," Cortez mocked, stepping out of the shadows. The ghost and his saint. How poetic. Rhoda aimed straight at his chest, fury in his eyes. "You should have stayed buried, Cortez." The man only grinned. "And miss this little family gathering? No, brother. Tonight's about endings." Shirley's breath hitched as she recognized the device in his hand. "Rhoda, the floor." But before she could finish, Cortez pressed his thumb against the trigger's edge, teasing the explosion like a vulture playing with its prey. "One step closer, and we all burn." Rhoda didn't flinch. "You think death scares me?" "No," Cortez said, tilting his head, "but losing her again might." The words sliced through Rhoda's armor. Cortez's laughter filled the hall, a cruel, hollow sound that mixed with thunder outside. Then, in a heartbeat, Rhoda fired. The bullet hit dead center, shattering Cortez's chest. The detonator slipped from his hand, but it was too late. The explosion ripped through the floor like hell itself, opening beneath them. Fire erupted in every direction, painting the world in shades of orange and agony. Rhoda's body moved before thought. He threw himself over Shirley, shielding her from the blast. The shockwave hurled them backward, debris crashing down, metal screaming, the ceiling collapsing in sparks. His lungs filled with smoke, ears ringing, body torn between pain and instinct. Flames crawled up the walls, devouring everything. "Shirley!" he coughed, his voice hoarse. She stirred beneath him, her hand weakly gripping his shirt. "I'm here." The relief was short-lived. The floor gave another violent shake, the structure ready to crumble. Rhoda pulled her up, dragging her through the inferno. The heat was unbearable, the air thick with ash and burning oil. Every step felt like running through a nightmare. Shirley stumbled, coughing hard, her strength fading. "You shouldn't have come," she choked. "You left me no choice." He tightened his arm around her waist. "We're getting out, together." They reached a side corridor, half collapsed, flames licking the walls. The exit sign flickered above. Freedom was just meters away. Then, a loud crack, a beam snapped, crashing between them. Rhoda leaped forward, but the fire swallowed the space in an instant. "Shirley!" he shouted, reaching through the flames. Her eyes met his through the fire's veil, wide, terrified yet full of love. "Rhoda, go! No, give me your hand!" He reached out, their fingers inches apart. The smoke thickened, her silhouette fading. A blinding flash, then nothing. When Rhoda opened his eyes again, everything was silent. The world was red and gold, the warehouse now a furnace of memories. He was lying on the ground, his clothes singed, skin stinging. He pushed himself up. coughing, searching the wreckage. "Shirley!" he shouted again, voice breaking. No answer, only the crackle of flames and the distant hiss of rain leaking through the shattered roof. He staggered to his feet, scanning the ruins. The floor was torn open, the fire reflected in pools of oil. His hand brushed something, her pendant, the same heart-shaped silver she had given him years ago. It was hot, blackened but unbroken. He clenched it in his fist, breath shaking. She had been here. She had been real. But now, gone again, like a dream ripped from his hands. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. He knew he couldn't stay. The place was collapsing. He stumbled toward the door, flames chasing his heels, the pendant pressed to his chest. When he finally burst outside, the night air hit him like salvation and punishment all at once. Behind him, the warehouse roared in flames, painting the river red. He stood there, soaked in rain and ash, watching the fire consume what little was left of his past. Somewhere beneath those flames was the woman he had sworn to protect, the one he'd found only to lose again. His knees weakened, but his resolve did not. As Luna's sleepy voice echoed faintly from the car, calling Mr. Road, he turned, forcing his pain back into silence. He had no tears left, only purpose. The fire behind him reflected in his eyes like a promise of war. Shirley was gone, but she had left him something more powerful than love, truth buried in flame. And Road vowed, as smoke rose to the heavens, that he would burn the world before letting her memory die again. The storm had finally drowned the fire. Black smoke still curled over the docks, twisting against the bruised sky. Road stood at the edge of the river, his coat scorched, his knuckles bleeding. The rain washed over him, but it couldn't cool the fever beneath his skin. His reflection on the water looked like a ghost, a man half alive, half burning. He clutched Shirley's pendant in his palm until it cut into his flesh. Her scent was gone. Her voice was gone. Only this cold piece of metal remained. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her reaching through the flames. Every time he blinked, he saw her disappear. The sirens faded behind him as he walked back toward the car. Luna was awake now, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Papa," she whispered, voice small against the sound of rain. Road forced a smile that never reached his eyes. "We're going home, baby." But even as he said it, he knew home didn't exist anymore. Not without Shirley. He lifted her into his arms, her warmth grounding him to something human. "Mommy will come back?" she asked softly. He froze, his heart twisted. "She's somewhere safe," he lied. The words tasted like ash. He buckled Luna in and started the engine. The tires splashed through puddles, cutting through smoke and fog, but his mind wasn't on the road. It was still inside the fire. He replayed every sound, every flash, every scream. Someone had set that trap, someone who knew their every move. And it wasn't just Cortez. Cortez had been too desperate, too sloppy at the end. Someone else had wanted her dead. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat, an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Static filled the line, then a voice, smooth, calm, hauntingly familiar. "You'll never find her if you keep looking in the dark." Rhodes' breath stopped. That voice. It couldn't be. "Who is this?" he demanded. "You don't recognize me, brother." The words sliced through him like glass. "Brother." Rhodes' hand tightened on the wheel. "Adrian," he whispered, disbelief shaking through his bones. A low chuckle answered him. "You sound surprised. Didn't expect ghosts to talk?" "I buried you," Rhodes growled. "I saw your body burn." "Bodies are easy to fake," Adrian said coldly. "Love isn't." Rhodes' knuckles whitened. "You faked your death. Why?" "You think you were the only one who loved her?" The car swerved slightly. Rhodes' vision blurred with fury. "What did you say?" "Shirley chose you," Adrian continued, voice dripping venom. "But she'll die for it." Rhodes slammed the brakes, tires screeching on the wet road. "Where is she?" he shouted into the phone. "She's with me," Adrian said softly. "And this time, I'm not giving her back." The line went dead. For a long moment, Rhodes just sat there, the phone trembling in his hand. The world outside blurred into streaks of rain and city lights. His pulse roared louder than the storm. Adrian, his brother, his blood, the man who taught him to shoot, to fight, to survive, the man he thought he'd lost 6 years ago, who had once sworn to protect Shirley as his own sister, now the man who held her captive. Rhodes' chest ached like something inside had cracked, and he slammed his fist against the steering wheel. Luna startled in the back seat. "Papa." He turned instantly, forcing calm into his voice. "It's okay, baby. Go back to sleep." Her eyes lingered on him for a moment before closing again. He exhaled shakily, lowering his forehead to the wheel. Everything he thought he knew about betrayal suddenly changed shape. He had blamed Cortez for tearing Shirley away from him, but the real puppeteer had always been closer. Adrian had faked his death 6 years ago, the same year Rhodes disappeared from Shirley's life. It wasn't coincidence. It was orchestration, a cruel masterpiece built on blood and lies. Pieces began to fall into place. Back then, Adrian had warned him, "Walk away from her, or you'll bury her." At the time, Rhodes thought it was fear, protective instinct. Now he saw it for what it had been, ownership. Adrian hadn't been protecting Shirley, he'd been keeping her. And when Rhodes defied him, Adrian destroyed everything. Rain hammered harder against the windshield, and Rhodes started the engine again, his eyes cold as steel. He needed answers, and answers always began with blood. He called his right-hand man, Damien, on a secure line. "Find out who used Dock C-27 in the last 72 hours, Rhodes ordered. "Yes, boss," Damien replied. "Cortez's men?" "Forget Cortez. He was a puppet. There's someone else." Silence on the line, then a quiet, shocked question. "Who?" "Adrian," Rhodes said. The line went dead again, this time from shock. Within minutes, Rhodes' convoy met him at the city's edge. Black SUVs, tinted glass, armed shadows waiting for a signal. Damien approached, rain dripping from his jacket. "Adrian's dead," he said flatly. "We buried him together, remember?" Rhodes' gaze was razor sharp. "That's what we were meant to believe." He tossed Damien the pendant. "He has Shirley." Damien's expression faltered. "How's that possible?" Rhodes looked toward the skyline, thunder rumbling overhead. "Because I made him this way." They drove in silence toward the old outskirts, toward the ruins of the Veretti mansion, where it had all begun and where the brothers last stood together before everything burned. The road twisted through fog and memory. Every turn felt like descending into the grave of his own past. When they reached the mansion gates, time itself seemed to hold its breath. The iron bars were rusted, the courtyard choked with vines, but the front door was open. A single light glowed inside, waiting. Rhodes stepped out, gun in hand, heart pounding in measured fury. Damien tried to follow, but Rhodes stopped him. "This is between brothers." Damien hesitated, then nodded. "If you're not out in 10 minutes, I'm coming in." Rhodes gave a faint smirk. "If I'm not out in 10 minutes, you'll be too late." He walked through the door, boots echoing on marble floors. Every wall whispered memories, fights, laughter, blood, and there, in the grand hall, stood Adrian, alive, whole, smiling. He hadn't aged a day since the night he died. His suit was immaculate, his posture calm, his eyes, the same stormy blue as Rhodes', cold and merciless. "Brother," Adrian said softly, "welcome home." Rhodes didn't speak. He only stared. He had buried this man with his own hands. He had mourned him, and now he was here, breathing, mocking life itself. Adrian's gaze fell on the pendant hanging from Rhodes' hand. "She kept that?" he asked, almost wistful. "Even after everything?" Rhodes raised his gun. "Where is she?" Adrian chuckled. Always straight to the point. You took her from me once, Rhodes snarled. You won't do it again. Adrian tilted his head. You think I took her? No. I saved her. Saved her from what? From you. The words hit harder than a bullet. Rhodes froze, anger boiling behind his eyes. Adrian stepped closer, voice calm but deadly. You brought death to everything you touched. Our family, our syndicate, her life. I just cleaned up the mess. By caging her? Rhodes roared. Adrian smiled faintly. You call it a cage. I call it sanctuary. Lightning flashed through the broken windows, casting jagged light across their faces. For a moment, it was like staring into a mirror. Same blood, same pain, different madness. Rhodes lowered his gun slightly, voice shaking with restrained fury. You've lost your mind. On the contrary, Adrian said, calm as ever. I've found clarity. She belongs with me, Rhodes. She always did. Rhodes' vision blurred red. He fired, but the bullet shattered only glass. Adrian was gone, vanished into the hall's shadow. His voice echoed through the mansion. Find me, brother, if you dare. Rhodes reloaded, every sense on edge. Rain thundered against the roof, and in the distance a woman's cry broke the silence. Shirley. He sprinted toward the sound, boots pounding against the marble. Behind him, Adrian's laughter followed like a curse. Let's see how much you're willing to lose this time. Rhodes pushed through the corridor, heart slamming, rage burning his veins. Somewhere in this decaying mansion, Shirley was alive and trapped again. He swore beneath his breath, voice low and deadly, I'm coming for you, Adrian, and this time I'll bury you, Damien. The storm had finally drowned the fire. Black smoke still curled over the docks, twisting against the bruised sky. Rhodes stood at the edge of the river. His coat scorched, his knuckles bleeding. The rain washed over him, but it couldn't cool the fever beneath his skin. His reflection on the water looked like a ghost, a man half alive, half burning. He clutched Shirley's pendant in his palm until it cut into his flesh. Her scent was gone. Her voice was gone. Only this cold piece of metal remained. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her reaching through the flames. Every time he blinked, he saw her disappear. The sirens faded behind him as he walked back toward the car. Luna was awake now, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Papa, she whispered, voice small against the sound of rain. Rhodes forced a smile that never reached his eyes. We're going home, baby. But even as he said it, he knew home didn't exist anymore. Not without Shirley. He lifted her into his arms, her warmth grounding him to something human. Mommy will come back? She asked softly. He froze, his heart twisted. She's somewhere safe, he lied. The words tasted like ash. He buckled Luna in and started the engine. The tires splashed through puddles, cutting through smoke and fog, but his mind wasn't on the road. It was still inside the fire. He replayed every sound, every flash, every scream. Someone had set that trap, someone who knew their every move. And it wasn't just Cortez. Cortez had been too desperate, too sloppy at the end. Someone else had wanted her dead. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat, an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Static filled the line, then a voice, smooth, calm, hauntingly familiar. You'll never find her if you keep looking in the dark. Rhodes' breath stopped. That voice. It couldn't be. Who is this? He demanded. You don't recognize me, brother. The words sliced through him like glass. Brother? Rhodes' hand tightened on the wheel. Adrian? He whispered, disbelief shaking through his bones. A low chuckle answered him. You sound surprised. Didn't expect ghosts to talk? I buried you, Rhodes growled. I saw your body burn. Bodies are easy to fake, Adrian said coldly. Love isn't. Rhodes' knuckles whitened. You faked your death. Why? You think you were the only one who loved her? The car swerved slightly. Rhode's vision blurred with fury. "What did you say?" "Shirley chose you," Adrian continued, voice dripping venom. "But she'll die for it." Rhodes slammed the brakes, tires screeching on the wet road. "Where is she?" he shouted into the phone. "She's with me," Adrian said softly, "and this time I'm not giving her back." The line went dead. For a long moment, Rhodes just sat there, the phone trembling in his hand. The world outside blurred into streaks of rain and city lights. His pulse roared louder than the storm. Adrian, his brother, his blood, the man who taught him to shoot, to fight, to survive, the man he thought he'd lost 6 years ago, who had once sworn to protect Shirley as his own sister. Now the man who held her captive. Rhodes' chest ached like something inside had cracked, and he slammed his fist against the steering wheel. Luna startled in the back seat. "Papa?" He turned instantly, forcing calm into his voice. "It's okay, baby, go back to sleep." Her eyes lingered on him for a moment before closing again. He exhaled shakily, lowering his forehead to the wheel. Everything he thought he knew about betrayal suddenly changed shape. He had blamed Cortez for tearing Shirley away from him, but the real puppeteer had always been closer. Adrian had faked his death 6 years ago, the same year Rhodes disappeared from Shirley's life. It wasn't coincidence, it was orchestration, a cruel masterpiece built on blood and lies. Pieces began to fall into place. Back then, Adrian had warned him, "Walk away from her, or you'll bury her." At the time, Rhodes thought it was fear, protective instinct. Now he saw it for what it had been: ownership. Adrian hadn't been protecting Shirley, he'd been keeping her, and when Rhodes defied him, Adrian destroyed everything. Rain hammered harder against the windshield, and Rhodes started the engine again, his eyes cold as steel. He needed answers, and answers always began with blood. He called his right-hand man, Damien, on a secure line. "Find out who used Dock C-27 in the last 72 hours, Rhodes ordered. "Yes, boss," Damien replied. "Cortez's men?" "Forget Cortez. He was a puppet. There's someone else." Silence on the line, then a quiet, shocked question. "Who?" "Adrian," Rhodes said. The line went dead again, this time from shock. Within minutes, Rhodes' convoy met him at the city's edge. Black SUVs, tinted glass, armed shadows waiting for a signal. Damien approached, rain dripping from his jacket. "Adrian's dead," he said flatly. "We buried him together, remember?" Rhodes' gaze was razor sharp. "That's what we were meant to believe." He tossed Damien the pendant. "He has Shirley." Damien's expression faltered. "How's that possible?" Rhodes looked toward the skyline, thunder rumbling overhead. "Because I made him this way." They drove in silence toward the old outskirts, toward the ruins of the Veretti mansion, where it had all begun and where the brothers last stood together before everything burned. The road twisted through fog and memory. Every turn felt like descending into the grave of his own past. When they reached the mansion gates, time itself seemed to hold its breath. The iron bars were rusted, the courtyard choked with vines, but the front door was open. A single light glowed inside, waiting. Rhodes stepped out, gun in hand, heart pounding in measured fury. Damien tried to follow, but Rhodes stopped him. "This is between brothers." Damien hesitated, then nodded. "If you're not out in 10 minutes, I'm coming in." Rhodes gave a faint smirk. "If I'm not out in 10 minutes, you'll be too late." He walked through the door, boots echoing on marble floors. Every wall whispered memories, fights, laughter, blood. And there, in the grand hall, stood Adrian, alive, whole, smiling. He hadn't aged a day since the night he died. His suit was immaculate, his posture calm, his eyes, the same stormy blue as Rhodes', cold and merciless. "Brother," Adrian said softly, "welcome home." Rhodes didn't speak. He only stared. He had buried this man with his own hands. He had mourned him. And now he was here, breathing, mocking life itself. Adrian's gaze fell on the pendant hanging from Rhodes' hand. She kept that? He asked, almost wistful. Even after everything? Rode raised his gun. Where is she? Adrian chuckled, always straight to the point. You took her from me once, Rode snarled. You won't do it again. Adrian tilted his head. You think I took her? No, I saved her. Saved her from what? From you. The words hit harder than a bullet. Rode froze, anger boiling behind his eyes. Adrian stepped closer, voice calm but deadly. You brought death to everything you touched, our family, our syndicate, her life. I just cleaned up the mess. By caging her? Rode roared. Adrian smiled faintly. You call it a cage. I call it sanctuary. Lightning flashed through the broken windows, casting jagged light across their faces. For a moment it was like staring into a mirror. Same blood, same pain, different madness. Rode lowered his gun slightly, voice shaking with restrained fury. You've lost your mind. On the contrary, Adrian said, calm as ever. I found clarity. She belongs with me, Rode. She always did. Rode's vision blurred red. He fired, but the bullet shattered only glass. Adrian was gone, vanished into the hall's shadow. His voice echoed through the mansion. Find me, brother, if you dare. Rode reloaded, every sense on edge. Rain thundered against the roof, and in the distance a woman's cry broke the silence. Surely, he sprinted toward the sound, boots pounding against the marble. Behind him, Adrian's laughter followed like a curse. Let's see how much you're willing to lose this time. Rode pushed through the corridor, heart slamming, rage burning his veins. Somewhere in this decaying mansion, Shirley was alive, and trapped again. He swore beneath his breath, voice low and deadly, I'm coming for you, Adrian, and this time I'll bury you, Damien. The mansion groaned beneath the storm's fury as Rode sprinted through the winding corridors, heart hammering like a war drum. Every flash of lightning carved Adrian's shadow across the walls, every echo of laughter, a reminder that the monster he was chasing once shared his blood. The air was thick with dust and decay, heavy with the ghosts of the Veretti name. His boots splashed through puddles of rain leaking from the cracked ceiling, gun clenched tight in his hand, breath shallow. Adrian! He roared, his voice swallowed by thunder. Somewhere deep within, a woman's cry cut through the chaos. Shirley. Rode followed it, his pulse quickening, turning through the grand hall lined with shattered portraits, remnants of a family that had once ruled the underworld. He stopped at the foot of a staircase where flickering candles burned, forming a path upward. Adrian was leading him somewhere, luring him. The smell of smoke grew stronger with every step, and the faint sound of chains echoed from above. He reached the cathedral room, once a private chapel where their father made them swear blood oaths. Now it was a mausoleum of betrayal. The tall stained glass windows were fractured, letting in flashes of lightning that painted the floor red and gold. At the center stood Shirley, her wrists chained to the altar's iron frame, rain dripping from her hair, eyes wide and glistening with fear. Don't, Rode, she whispered, voice trembling. He froze, the sight of her stealing the air from his lungs. It's over, came a cold voice from behind the altar. Adrian stepped into view, holding a gun in one hand and a cigarette in the other, smoke curling around his face like a serpent. His suit was immaculate, his expression calm, but his eyes, those eyes burned with madness. You should have stayed away, brother, Adrian said. I warned you. You never listen. Rode raised his gun, fury trembling in his voice. Let her go. Adrian tilted his head, smiling faintly. You still think this is about her? It's always been about her, Rode snapped. Adrian's gaze softened for a fleeting second, then hardened again. She betrayed us both. Shirley shook her head weakly, tears streaking her soot-covered cheeks. That's not true. Quiet, Adrian barked, his gun jerking toward her. Rode took a step forward, his aim steady. You lay a hand on her, I swear. Swear what? Adrian interrupted. "You'll kill me? Again?" He laughed bitterly. "You couldn't even do it right the first time." Rhodes' hand twitched on the trigger. "Why, Adrian? Why fake your death? Why destroy everything?" Adrian's lips curled into a cruel smirk. "Because you took everything. Our father's empire, her love, her loyalty. You left me nothing but ashes. So I built something new out of them." He turned the gun slightly toward Shirley. "That child she hides." His words froze Rhodes' blood. "Don't you dare," Rhodes growled. Adrian's smile deepened. "That child is mine." The world seemed to stop. Rain hammered against the glass. Thunder roared outside, but Rhodes heard nothing except the echo of those words tearing through his chest. "You're lying," he whispered. Shirley's voice cracked as she cried, "He's lying, Rhodes. Please don't listen." "Oh, am I?" Adrian murmured. "You disappeared for 6 years, brother. Did you really think she was alone all that time? Did you really think she waited for a ghost?" Rhodes' vision blurred red, rage and heartbreak colliding inside him. "You're sick," he spat. Adrian chuckled softly. "No, I'm enlightened." He stepped closer to Shirley, brushing a finger along her jaw. "She learned to love the one who stayed." Rhodes fired a warning shot, the bullet grazing the pillar inches from Adrian's head. "Step away from her!" Adrian didn't flinch. "You can't protect what was never yours." His finger tightened on the trigger. In that heartbeat, Rhodes saw everything: the fire, the betrayal, the woman he loved trapped between two brothers cursed by the same blood. The sound of thunder and gunfire became one as both men pulled the trigger almost simultaneously. The echo shattered the stained glass, shards raining down like broken stars. Adrian staggered, eyes wide in disbelief, a crimson bloom spreading across his chest. His gun clattered to the floor. Rhodes' hand trembled, smoke curling from his weapon. For a moment, time stopped. Adrian looked down at his wound, then back up at Rhodes, a faint smile forming on his lips. "You finally did it," he whispered, voice fading. "You killed your own blood. For her." He stumbled backward, collapsing against the altar steps, blood pooling beneath him. Rhodes' heart pounded in his ears as he rushed forward, unchaining Shirley with trembling hands. She fell into his arms, weak, trembling, her pulse faint but steady. "Shirley, look at me," he begged, brushing her hair from her face. "It's over. You're safe now." Her eyes fluttered open, glimmering with tears. "You came," she whispered. "Always," he said, voice breaking. She touched his face with trembling fingers, tracing the scar on his jaw like she was memorizing him again. "You never stopped being my safe place," she whispered. Her voice was fading, her breaths shallow. "Shirley, stay with me," he urged, pressing his forehead against hers. But her eyes rolled back, her body going limp in his arms. "No, no, no," Rhodes muttered, shaking her lightly. "Don't you dare leave me again." Footsteps thundered behind him. Damien burst into the cathedral, gun drawn, eyes wide at the sight before him. "Boss!" he shouted. "What happened?" Rhodes' voice was hollow. "It's over." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure. Damien knelt beside Adrian's body, checking for a pulse. "He's still breathing," Damien muttered. Rhodes' eyes flashed cold. "Not for long." He lifted his gun, aiming at Adrian's head, but Damien grabbed his arm. "Don't, not like this." Rhodes' jaw clenched. "He took everything from me." "Then don't let him take what's left of you," Damien said softly. For a long moment, Rhodes said nothing. Thunder rolled again, lightning flashing through the ruined glass. Adrian coughed weakly, blood bubbling at his lips. "You can't kill me twice," he rasped, smirking through pain. "I'll live forever in what I took from you." Rhodes stared down at him, eyes full of storm and sorrow. "You already died the first time you betrayed her." He turned away, carrying Shirley in his arms, her body limp but still warm. Call the doctor, he ordered Damien, and find a way to make this place disappear. Damien nodded, grabbing his radio. As Rode stepped into the rain, the mansion behind him began to collapse, flames licking through its ancient bones. He laid Shirley gently inside the car, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, though his voice trembled with doubt. Luna's name lingered on his tongue, the reminder of what was still at stake. He looked back at the burning mansion, its windows glowing like the eyes of the past watching him burn with them. Somewhere inside, Adrian's laughter still echoed faintly through the storm, fading but not gone. Rode closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every choice, every sin, every loss. As the sirens wailed in the distance and rain washed the blood from his hands, he whispered to the night, "If fate wants war, it will have it." And with that vow, he drove into the darkness, the fire behind him lighting the road to whatever came next, blood, truth, and the heart still beating between them. The night slowly gave way to dawn as Rode's car cut through the fading rain, the fire behind him shrinking into the horizon until it became nothing more than a whisper of smoke against the awakening sky. The road stretched endlessly ahead, wet asphalt glistening like spilled glass under the pale morning light. In the passenger seat, Shirley's head rested against his shoulder, her breathing faint but steady. Rode drove in silence, the hum of the engine mixing with the rhythm of her heartbeat. Every mile felt like escaping hell itself, every second like a stolen piece of peace he'd thought he'd never touch again. When the city skyline finally rose from the mist, he exhaled for the first time in hours. The mansion loomed at the edge of the cliffs, untouched by war, bathed in the soft blush of morning. Damien's men were already waiting at the gates, their cars lined up like sentinels. But Rode didn't slow. He carried Shirley inside himself, past the echoes of gunfire, past the ghosts that refused to die. As he crossed the threshold of his home, he realized it didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like the last safe place left in the world. Damien met him at the door, his expression tight with worry. "The doctor's ready," he said. Rode nodded, carrying Shirley inside, refusing to let anyone else touch her. Her weight was light, but it felt like carrying his entire past, the pain, the love, the years lost between them. He laid her gently on the grand bed of his private suite, where sunlight filtered through the curtains like strands of gold. The doctor worked in silence, tending to her burns and shallow cuts, stitching the wound that Adrian's madness had left behind. Rode stood at the window, fists clenched, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the sunrise. The world outside looked calm, but inside him raged a storm of guilt and tenderness he couldn't name. Damien stepped closer. "Cortez's men scattered. Adrian's dead. It's finally over." Rode didn't turn. "It's never over," he murmured, "not until she opens her eyes." Hours passed in a haze of waiting. Rain turned to sunlight, and the house filled with the quiet sounds of life returning. When at last Shirley stirred, a soft groan escaping her lips, Rode was already beside her. He caught her hand before she could even move, his thumb tracing the fragile pulse beneath her skin. Her lashes fluttered, and then she looked at him. The same gaze that once made him forget the world. "Rode?" she whispered, voice hoarse but alive. Relief broke across his face like sunlight after years of winter. "I'm here," he said softly. She blinked, confused. Where are we?" "Home," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You're safe." Tears filled her eyes, unbidden, rolling down her temples. "You saved me. Again." He gave a faint smile, the kind that came from pain and gratitude all at once. "You were always the reason I lived, Shirley. The only thing that ever made sense." Her lips trembled into a smile. "You should have hated me for what he said." "I did," Rode admitted quietly, "but only long enough to realize I could never stop loving you." Her breath caught. The weight of 6 years of silence settled between them, fragile yet sacred. She reached up and cupped his cheek. "We lost so much time." "Then let's not waste another second," he whispered, pressing his forehead against hers. At that moment, the door burst open and a small voice giggled, breaking the heaviness like a sunbeam through storm clouds. "Papa!" Luna ran into the room, hair messy, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. Rode turned, caught off guard, and then smiled. A real, unguarded smile he hadn't worn in years. He scooped her into his arms, kissing her cheek as she giggled. "You're up early, little moon." "You said Mommy would come back," she said proudly, eyes wide as she turned to see Shirley awake. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Shirley's lips parted, trembling as tears filled her eyes. "Luna?" The little girl blinked, confused at first, then smiled shyly. "You look like my dreams." Rhodes swallowed the lump in his throat, watching as Shirley extended a trembling hand. Luna crawled onto the bed, curling against her mother's side, fitting perfectly into the space that had been empty for years. For the first time since the fire, Rhodes felt the world stop spinning. Damien lingered quietly at the doorway, watching with a faint smile. "You did it, boss," he said softly. "You got her back." Rhodes looked up, eyes softer than they'd ever been. "No," he said. "She got me back." Hours later, the mansion came alive with warmth. The smell of food drifted from the kitchen. Laughter echoed faintly through the halls, sounds that had been strangers for too long. Shirley sat wrapped in a soft blanket by the window, Luna asleep in her lap, her fingers gently combing through the child's hair. Rhodes stood beside her, looking out at the ocean beyond the cliffs. The waves crashed below, wild and free, but for once he didn't feel the urge to conquer them. He only wanted to stay here, in this fragile piece he'd carved from ruin. "You used to dream of this," Shirley said quietly. "A life without war." He nodded. "I thought it didn't exist." She looked up at him, smiling faintly. "It does. You just needed to stop fighting it." He turned to her, his hand finding hers. "I can't promise I'll ever stop fighting, but for you, I'll learn how to live." She leaned her head against his shoulder, eyes fluttering closed. "Then live with me. Not as the man the world fears, but as the man I fell in love with." Outside, the sun dipped into the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and crimson. Night crept in softly, wrapping the mansion in calm. Later that evening, after Luna had fallen asleep, Rhodes and Shirley stood on the balcony overlooking the ocean. The wind carried the scent of rain and roses, and the moon bathed them in silver light. Shirley's hair danced in the breeze, her white dress glowing against the night. "We lost years," she said softly, her fingers intertwining with his. "Years we can never get back." Rhodes turned to her, eyes filled with quiet fire. "Then let's live the rest making up for them." He pulled her close, his hand cupping her face, and their lips met in a kiss that wasn't desperate, wasn't broken. It was home. All the blood, the pain, the years apart, all of it melted into that single moment beneath the moonlight. When they finally broke apart, her forehead rested against his chest, and for the first time, his heart felt still. "What now?" she whispered. Rhodes glanced toward the city below, the empire that once defined him. "Now," he said softly, "we build something that lasts." "A family?" she asked. He smiled. "A legacy of peace." Damien watched them from the garden below, a faint smirk on his face as he lit a cigarette. For once, even he believed the boss deserved this ending. The wind carried the sound of laughter from the balcony, blending with the rustling leaves and distant waves, and as the stars scattered across the sky, the man the world once called a monster held the woman who had tamed his chaos, their hearts beating as one. The Mafia boss had found his redemption, not in war, not in power, but in love. And when dawn rose again, painting the mansion in gold, Rode stood by the window with Shirley and Luna in his arms, whispering a silent vow to the heavens. This time, nothing will take them away. The city slept, unaware that its most feared man had finally found peace. Not in darkness, but in the light of the family he fought the world to protect. The storm was over, and for the first time in his life, Rode didn't fear the morning. He welcomed it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Heartwoven Tales and press the bell icon so you never miss the next emotional journey. Share it with your friends and loved ones, because every heart deserves a story that moves it. Stay tuned for the next tale, where love, pain, and fate weave once more.